Gentlemen, if you're an older man, listen carefully, because the world isn't going to tell you this. You're not washed up. You're not too late. But if you're not careful, time will trick you into wasting your final, most powerful years. This is your wake-up call. You've lived, failed, loved, lost, and learned. That experience is priceless. What many men don't realize as they grow older is that the most valuable currency they possess isn't their bank account, their status, or their connections. It's their wisdom. The lessons you've earned through pain, through triumph, through the relentless grind of decades, those are worth more than gold. In a society that glorifies youth and speed, people forget the power of patience, reflection, and perspective. That's where you come in. You're no longer the reckless boy chasing short-term thrills. You're the man who has seen storms, walked through fire, and come out the other side with scars that tell a story. And that story matters. Your wisdom is your weapon. It's the sharpest blade you'll ever carry. Younger men might have energy, ambition, and boldness, but what they lack is the foresight and restraint that only time can teach. While they rush headfirst into mistakes, you see them coming. While they argue over petty things, you sit back and assess. You understand that not every battle is worth fighting, not every invitation deserves a response, and not every opportunity leads to peace. That's what time has taught you, and that's what gives you an edge. But here's the tragedy. Most older men silence themselves. They shrink into the background, thinking their voice no longer matters. Society often pushes them out, labeling them as outdated, irrelevant, or stuck in their ways. And that's a lie, because the truth is, the world desperately needs grounded, composed, mentally sharp men to step forward, not to dominate, but to guide, not to lecture, but to model. You don't need to speak loudly. Your energy speaks for you. Your calm presence in a room full of chaos speaks for you. Your ability to stay collected under pressure, to advise with clarity, and to act with precision, that speaks volumes. Think about how many young men today are lost, confused, pulled in every direction by social media, fake role models, and empty promises. They don't need another trend or shortcut. They need someone who's been through the war, someone who knows what matters and what doesn't, someone who understands that success isn't fast cars or expensive watches. It's waking up at peace with yourself. You can be that man, not by preaching, but by living with integrity, by being the kind of man who others naturally look to for guidance, not because he demands it, but because he embodies it. And wisdom doesn't mean perfection. It means you've made mistakes and learned from them. It means you carry both humility and confidence in the right proportions. It means you've mastered the art of listening more than you speak, of waiting longer before reacting, of seeing beyond the surface. And that kind of man is rare. That kind of man is dangerous in the best way possible. This is why you must never doubt your relevance, your insight, your clarity, your ability to see the bigger picture. That's not something you lose with age. That's something that sharpens with age. You've become the lighthouse in the storm, not moved by waves, not chasing ships, just standing firm, guiding those who are wise enough to watch. Your money, status, even your legacy means nothing if you can't walk without pain or breathe without effort. It's a hard truth, but an unavoidable one. Without your health, everything else collapses. When you're younger, your body can take a lot of abuse. You can eat poorly, skip sleep, drink heavily, sit for hours without stretching, and somehow bounce back the next day. But age doesn't forgive. Every unhealthy choice you made in your 20s and 30s begins to collect interest in your 40s, 50s, and beyond. And before you know it, things that were once easy getting out of bed, climbing stairs, going for a walk, lifting your own groceries, suddenly feel like challenges. That's when it hits you. Nothing you've built matters if you can't move freely, think clearly, or live independently. Most men don't realize how much of their identity is tied to physical autonomy until it starts slipping away. You can't lead if you're constantly in pain. You can't enjoy the fruits of your labor if you're too fatigued to travel or play with your grandkids. You can't defend yourself or others if you're always catching your breath. That's why, as an older man, health is no longer optional. It's not something to get around to when you have time. It has to become part of who you are. Your daily ritual, your discipline, your sacred duty. And health isn't just about the physical. It's mental, emotional, hormonal. You need to protect your body like a fortress, but also sharpen your mind like a blade. Get your blood work done. Understand your hormones, your deficiencies, your vulnerabilities. Don't wait until you're hospitalized to care. Preventative action is your new weapon. Movement is medicine. Lifting weights isn't about vanity anymore, it's about functionality. Cardio isn't punishment, it's preparation. Stretching isn't for the weak, it's for the wise. Fuel your body with what it actually needs, not with what gives you 5 minutes of comfort. Sleep like your life depends on it, because it does. Hydrate like you respect yourself. And walk every day, because walking is a quiet act of rebellion against decay. You must also protect your mind. Isolation, bitterness, regret. These are just as deadly as cigarettes. Keep learning, stay curious. Challenge your brain. Read books, solve problems, engage in real conversations. Protect your peace like it's oxygen, because when your mind is gone, your body becomes a cage. And when your body is gone, your mind becomes a prison. But when both are healthy, you become untouchable. You become the rare man who doesn't just survive age. He dominates it. And yes, discipline gets harder as you get older. The excuses get louder. I've earned my rest. It's too late to change now. What's the point? But those are lies whispered by weakness, by the part of you that's afraid to fight. Because the truth is, every rep, every step, every clean meal is a middle finger to Father Time. You might not be able to turn back the clock, but you can slow it down. And in doing so, you buy yourself more life, not just in years, but in quality, more moments, more memories, more freedom, and what could be more masculine, more stoic, more powerful, than mastering the very thing that most men let destroy them? So treat your health as the ultimate show of self-respect, because if you don't care for your body, you're telling the world you've given up on yourself. And the man who gives up on himself is already halfway dead. Chasing women, chasing approval, chasing validation. It's a cycle that leaves men empty. When you're young, it feels like that's the game you're supposed to play. You chase success, you chase status, you chase beauty, thinking that when you finally catch it, you'll feel whole. But as you age, you begin to see the truth. Chasing never ends. The target keeps moving, the high fades faster, and the return on investment gets smaller. What you once thought would fulfill you ends up enslaving you. And it's only when you stop chasing that you begin to understand the real power of masculine presence. The man who leads doesn't run after things. He draws them to him through purpose, clarity, and control. A man who leads has direction, not just ambition, but direction. He knows who he is, what he stands for, and where he's going. He wakes up with intention. He walks into a room with posture. He speaks with conviction, not because he wants to impress, but because he believes in what he says. That kind of man is magnetic. Women sense it, other men respect it, and the world responds to it. He's not desperate for attention, he's not performing, he's not trying to be liked. He leads himself first and foremost, and that leadership extends outward like a ripple in water. When you stop chasing, you stop bleeding energy. You stop compromising your integrity for temporary rewards. You stop sacrificing your values just to be seen or accepted. You begin to move in alignment with something deeper than external validation. You lead your own life, and as a result, others naturally follow. This isn't about arrogance. It's not about controlling people. It's about embodying something stable in a world full of instability. Most people are lost. Most people are addicted to distraction, comfort, approval. A man who doesn't need any of that. He stands out like a mountain. You don't chase women. You attract the right kind of woman by becoming the right kind of man. When you lead with character, with depth, with purpose, the right feminine energy recognizes it without you having to beg or perform. You don't need to manipulate or impress. You simply need to stand firm. Because women don't truly want a man who bends to their whims. They want a man who knows who he is, even when they test him, even when they pull away, even when they challenge him. That stability is what creates attraction. That calm, grounded leadership is what makes a man unforgettable, and it's not just in relationships. This applies to every area of life. Stop chasing attention online. Stop chasing people who don't see your worth. Stop chasing dreams that aren't even yours. The need to chase often comes from a wound, an insecurity, a fear, a feeling that you're not enough as you are. And as long as you feed that wound with more chasing, it will never heal. But when you begin to lead, when you pause, reflect, take ownership, you start building something real. You move from hunger to mastery, from desperation to discipline. Leadership requires solitude. It requires reflection. It requires doing things that aren't glamorous. Waking up early, saying no to distractions, building skills in silence. It requires you to get comfortable walking alone, and that's why so few men lead, because leadership is lonely at first. It's tempting to go back to the crowd, to seek approval, to chase. But if you can withstand that early loneliness, you reach a place where you're no longer moved by opinions, no longer chasing trends, no longer afraid to stand alone. You become the man people look to when they're lost, the man whose opinion actually carries weight, the man who can be trusted, not because he's loud, but because he's consistent. That's the power of leading rather than chasing. And the older you get, the more urgent this truth becomes, because time strips away illusions. It exposes the hollow pursuits, the fake connections, the wasted years. And if you're not careful, you'll wake up one day having chased everything and led nothing, not even yourself. So ask yourself, are you chasing because you want it, or because you fear being without it? Because the man who leads doesn't ask that question. He already knows. He moves with certainty, not because he has all the answers, but because he's not afraid to live by his own. Legacy, it's a word men often think about in terms of children, inheritance, or career accomplishments. But that's only part of it. Legacy is not just something you leave behind after you're gone. Legacy is the trail of energy, impact, and integrity you leave in every room you walk into. It's the result of the way you carry yourself every single day, the choices you make when no one's watching, the way you respond under pressure, the values you live by even when they're inconvenient. And the older you get, the more critical it becomes to understand this. Because your legacy is being written right now in the silence, in the shadows, far from the spotlight. It's not about the noise you make, it's about the example you become. Most men misunderstand legacy. They think it's about doing something grand, something big enough that people remember their name. But the truth is, it's rarely the big moments that define you. It's the small daily habits, the way you treat people when you're tired, the discipline you maintain when no one's forcing you, the way you speak about others when they're not in the room. Those are the quiet moments that stack up and define who you are. Your reputation may be what people say about you, but your legacy is what they feel when they think about you. It's the standard you lived by, and whether or not it made others rise. As a man ages, there's a shift that happens. The external achievements begin to matter less, and the internal compass becomes everything. You begin to care more about depth than display, more about meaning than metrics. And that's when you realize that the most powerful legacies aren't built on attention. They're built on consistency. They're built by men who chose to keep showing up, who chose to be reliable, to be firm, to be anchored even when life tried to knock them off balance. These men don't need applause. They don't seek credit. They lead by example, and that example becomes a code that others learn to follow. Your legacy lives in the way your son watches how you treat his mother. It lives in how you handle defeat, how you respond to criticism, how you carry yourself when you're tested. It lives in the eyes of younger men who are quietly watching you to figure out what manhood looks like. And they're always watching, even when you think no one is. They notice if you fold under pressure. They notice if your words don't match your actions. They notice if you preach values you don't practice. You may never know the full impact you're having, but that doesn't mean it's not happening. Influence doesn't require an audience. It just requires authenticity. There's a certain weight that comes with aging. You become aware of your mortality, and if you're wise, you begin to sharpen your focus. You stop spreading yourself thin. You start asking better questions. Not how much can I get, but what kind of man am I becoming? Not who's watching me, but what do I represent even when no one is? That shift is the beginning of true legacy. It's not about building monuments. It's about building a standard, a principle, a path. Something others can walk behind, not because they have to, but because it leads somewhere worth going. Legacy also means restraint. It means resisting the temptations that could destroy everything you've built. It means having the strength to say no to what might feel good now but would poison your name later. One weak moment can ruin decades of strength. One reckless decision can tarnish the respect you've earned. That's why real legacy is guarded with discipline. It's protected by a code. You don't allow yourself to be ruled by impulse, emotion, or ego, because you know the consequences stretch far beyond the moment. They echo, they ripple, and they land on people who may never even meet you. But perhaps the most profound aspect of legacy is that it's not really about you. It's about what you pass on, your mindset, your values, your resilience, your silence in the face of chaos, the calm strength you showed when everyone else panicked, the way you stayed grounded when others were desperate to be seen. These are the things people remember. Not the things you said, but the way you lived. Not the image you portrayed, but the substance behind it. Your legacy is the sum of all the silent, unseen decisions you make when no one is around to give you a pat on the back. And so, every day is a page in your story. Every moment is a choice. Will you act in a way that elevates your name or diminishes it? Will you respond like a man who knows he's being watched by future generations, or like someone who believes there are no consequences? You don't need to be a king to leave a royal legacy. You just need to live like one, with discipline, with dignity, with the quiet, unwavering strength of a man who understands that greatness is not loud. it is consistent. And that real power doesn't shout. It doesn't demand to be remembered. It simply endures. There's a kind of silence that grows louder as you age. The house gets quieter. The phone rings less. The calendar clears out. And eventually, if you're not careful, you find yourself sitting alone with a kind of emptiness that no achievement can fill. This is the part no one talks about. The emotional weight that creeps in after the striving slows down. The quiet that reveals everything you once buried under busyness. And here's the truth most older men never say out loud. Many of them are emotionally starved, not weak, not broken, just starved. Because for most of their lives they've been taught to suppress, to harden, to handle it all without ever acknowledging what it's doing to them on the inside. You were told that emotions are a liability, that to feel deeply is to be soft, that anger is acceptable, but sadness is shameful, that stoicism means silence instead of mastery over reaction. But what that conditioning creates is a man who walks through life emotionally limping, unable to fully connect, unable to fully express, unable to fully feel. He becomes a fortress without doors, impenetrable, sure, but also isolated. And with time that isolation turns into a quiet suffering. You can't numb just pain. You end up numbing joy, wonder, connection too. You become good at surviving, but you forget how to live. Emotional awareness isn't about becoming overly sensitive. It's not about crying on cue or constantly expressing how you feel. It's about learning the terrain of your own inner world so you can master it, not avoid it. It's about knowing what you're carrying, what's weighing you down, and what you need to let go of to move forward without dragging your past behind you like an anchor. Because unresolved emotions don't disappear. They just get buried, and with time they leak out as bitterness, passive aggression, coldness, or a general disinterest in life. A man who lacks emotional awareness starts losing control in subtle ways. He becomes irritable without knowing why. He withdraws from the people who care about him. He loses the ability to connect with his partner. His joy fades. His motivation drops. And eventually, he finds himself wondering why nothing satisfies him anymore. That's what happens when you're disconnected from your own heart. The fire goes out, not with a bang, but with a slow, unnoticed flicker. But the man who turns inward and confronts what he's feeling, he reclaims his strength. He doesn't let emotions rule him, but he also doesn't pretend they don't exist. He learns to sit with discomfort without running from it. He understands that anger is often grief in disguise, that silence can be a mask for fear, that pride sometimes hides deep shame, and in doing so, he becomes more dangerous, not less, because a man who knows himself can't be manipulated. He can't be baited into reactions. He doesn't project his wounds onto others. He owns them, and that ownership makes him whole. Emotional maturity is a skill, just like discipline, just like leadership. It can be trained, and for older men, it's one of the most crucial skills to develop. Because as the body slows down, the heart starts speaking louder. The past catches up. The regrets come knocking. The memories get heavier. And if you haven't developed the ability to process and understand your emotions, you'll drown in them quietly. You'll smile on the outside while eroding on the inside. You'll appear fine to the world while falling apart in private. This is why solitude is important, but not the kind of solitude that isolates, the kind that allows you to reflect, to ask hard questions, to confront the old wounds you tried to outwork or outperform, to sit in stillness without reaching for a distraction. And it's not weakness to do this. It's courage. The kind of courage most men never display. It takes strength to feel. It takes power to look inward and face what you've been running from for decades. That's real masculinity. That's real maturity. Not avoidance, but accountability. And something powerful happens when a man develops emotional awareness. He becomes more present. He listens better. He leads with compassion, not just command. He finds deeper connection in his relationships. He becomes a better partner, a better father, a better friend, not because he's softer, but because he's fuller, more integrated. He stops reacting and starts responding. He stops numbing and starts feeling again. And in that process, he finds peace, not as a concept, but as a lived experience. Most men don't need therapy. They need honesty. They need time in silence, not to escape, but to understand. They need to admit what hurt them, who disappointed them, where they felt unseen. They need to acknowledge the weight they've carried alone for decades. Only then can they set it down. Only then can they walk lighter, not less masculine, more. Because there is nothing more masculine than a man who is fully awake to himself. Not ruled by emotion, but not afraid of it either. A man like that doesn't just age, he evolves. Time becomes more valuable the older you get, not just because there's less of it, but because you finally start to understand how much of it you've wasted. When you're young, you move like you have forever. You squander hours, days, even years chasing people, distractions, approval, and fleeting pleasures that leave you emptier every time. You convince yourself there's always more time to do what matters, to fix what's broken, to say what should have been said. But as the years stack up, reality sets in, the runway gets shorter, the chances get fewer, and you begin to see time for what it truly is, the most sacred currency a man possesses. You can always earn more money, you can rebuild your body, you can recover from mistakes, but you can never get back wasted time. Once it's gone, it's gone. That's why one of the most powerful shifts an older man can make is learning to treat time with reverence. Every moment matters, every conversation matters, every decision either adds to your legacy or subtracts from it. There are no throwaway days. There is no such thing as killing time. Time is not your enemy. It's not your friend, it's your responsibility, and how you use it reveals everything about what you truly value. A man who wastes time is a man at war with his purpose. He lives in distraction. He overcommits to things that don't move him forward. He tolerates toxic people. He gives attention to nonsense. He lets the trivial dominate the meaningful. And before he knows it, he's spent decades building someone else's dream, feeding someone else's ego, chasing someone else's idea of success. Then one day he wakes up, looks in the mirror, and doesn't recognize the man staring back at him, not because he's aged, but because he abandoned himself long ago. But a man who values his time becomes ruthless with it. He doesn't waste it on drama. He doesn't argue with fools. He doesn't try to prove himself to people who already made up their minds. He doesn't chase what doesn't nourish him. He becomes selective, not out of arrogance, but out of respect for his own life. He understands that saying yes to one thing means saying no to another. So he chooses with care. He chooses with clarity. He chooses with the weight of mortality resting firmly on his shoulders. As you grow older, this awareness should sharpen, not dull. You should become less available to the world's noise and more available to your own calling. You should start cutting things out, not adding more in. Simplicity becomes power, focus becomes freedom, and silence becomes sacred. You realize you don't need to be everywhere. You don't need to respond to everything. You don't need to explain yourself to people who aren't really listening. You just need to stay aligned. Aligned with your purpose, your values, and the limited time you have left. There's also a deeper, quieter truth about time that hits harder the older you get. People you love will leave, opportunities will disappear. Health will decline, life will humble you again and again, often when you least expect it. And in those moments, you won't wish you had made more money or chased more status. You'll wish you had been more present. That you had spent more time in deep conversations, that you had slowed down and really looked into the eyes of the people who mattered, that you had forgiven sooner, spoken truth faster, loved deeper. These are the things you carry into your final years, not trophies but moments, not possessions but presence. That's why urgency isn't panic, it's power. It's the realization that life is not a rehearsal, that this moment matters more than you think, that your attention is a gift, and where you place it determines the quality of your life. The man who masters time masters his world, not because he controls the clock, but because he no longer lets it control him. He doesn't live in reaction. He lives in rhythm. He doesn't move faster. He moves with intention, and that intention changes everything. So take inventory. Look at where your time is going. Look at who's getting your energy. Ask yourself daily, is this how I want to spend a piece of my life? Because that's what time really is. A piece of your life given away, moment by moment, never to be returned. Spend it wisely. Spend it deliberately. Spend it like it's sacred, because it is. And the man who learns to honor time doesn't just grow older. He grows wiser, sharper, more focused. He doesn't fear aging. He embraces it. Because with every passing year, he becomes less distracted and more dangerous. Not because of what he can do, but because of what he refuses to waste. So if you're an older man watching this, understand this truth. Your time is not over, it's just more precious now. You are not irrelevant, you are refined. Every scar, every mistake, every lesson has shaped you into a man who still has the power to influence, to lead, to love, to build, and to leave behind something real. But only if you stop moving like you have forever. Only if you stop giving your energy to what drains you and start channeling it into what defines you. You don't need to be faster, louder, or younger. You just need to be deliberate, steady, clear, because the world doesn't need more noise. It needs men of quiet, grounded power. Men like you, who know their time is limited, and who choose every data, make it count.